Again, Congresswoman, I recognize that the privilege is not mine, but I've been asked by the White House to... Congresswoman, I'd be happy to answer your question, or you can just have a conversation by yourself. But if you'd like to ask me a question, I'll be happy to answer it.
I'm going to continue. The reason is
well, then don't ask me a question if you don't want to hear my answer.
I'm reclaiming my time. This is a House judiciary, not a House party.
Welcome back to Close Up. That was former Trump presidential campaign manager Corey Lewandowski of Windham testifying before the Judiciary Committee this past week. While House Democrats are considering holding him in contempt over those answers to their questions, most political watchers are saying Lewandowski definitely made the most of his opportunity on Capitol Hill to promote his potential U.S. Senate candidacy. To break things down, we bring in John DeStaso, WMUR political reporter. John,
good morning, Alan.
Thanks for joining us. Certainly don't want to trivialize what the House Judiciary Committee is working on. It's very serious what they're talking about in terms of President Trump. But from the political standpoint, a lot of people are saying that Lewandowski flipped the script on these guys and came out looking like the winner.
Well, that's certainly the point of view of those who are Republicans and those who are sort of in the corner of Lewandowski and the Trump camp. The Democrats, of course, are spinning it and claiming that he was caught in lies and was really very inconsistent on a lot of ways. But as someone who is considering very strongly running for the U.S. Senate, he really couldn't, again, not to trivialize, but he couldn't have bought more advertising in terms of playing to the Trump base, playing to the president himself, who of course would be fully expected to endorse him, and really kind of laying out why he should be, in his mind, not only the nominee of the Republican Party, but the next U.S. Senator.
Of course, this all plays out on social media as well. The president tweeting out support for Mr. Lewandowski during the hearing. Also, you were able to break some news about a new political action committee being formed. What's going on there to try and assist Lewandowski?
Yeah, there are some very significant people. A gentleman by the name of Marty Obst, O-B-S-T. He is a very long-time Mike Pence confidant. John Brabender, sort of in that same camp. National people who can bring in a lot of money, along with a local person who also has national ties, Mike Biondo. And so, yeah, we were able to get the kind of the break on that story. And unbeknownst to me, around the same time that I was breaking the story, when their website went live, Corey Lewandowski, during a break in the hearing, was tweeting about it. I had no idea until I saw the tweet, like anybody else.
Obviously, things are playing out in very new and interesting ways.
Lots of money. Let me just wrap that by saying this group can bring in lots of money on behalf of Lewandowski as independent expenditures, should he run, which he's expected to do.
Right. And you and our colleague Gene Mackin interviewed Mr. Lewandowski this last week after the testimony. What's your read? Does it sound like he is getting into this race? Certainly everything appears to be moving in that direction.
He seems very much moving in that direction. He even laid out what he feels is sort of the reasons that he would run, and that has to do with fundraising. By October 15th, by the end of this month, will be the end of the third quarter. People who are candidates, those who are candidates, have to report how much money they've raised during the quarter. Corey Lewandowski says that if those who are announced can't show that they've raised $2 million each in the quarter, that gives him sort of a go-ahead. He may go ahead anyway, because he could probably raise, between himself and that super PAC we were talking about, lots and lots of money. But if you look at Gene's story and that interview, he sounds very much like he's anxious to run and realizes that he will have the support of the president. Now, a general election, should he win that primary, which would be a four-way primary right now, a general election would be certainly challenging because Jeanne Shaheen has, she has a lot of credibility across a fairly broad spectrum of the state, having been a three-term governor and now a two-term senator.
And of course, in the people who are actually in the race, Bill O'Brien getting a notable endorsement of Ted Cruz. We'll see how that plays out, John.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being here.
Okay.
Appreciate
it, Adam.
And that wraps up this edition of Close Up New Hampshire. Thanks for watching. Do make sure to tune in next week when we come back here on Sunday. Thanks for joining us.